Dean Moorhead Confirmation Resolution of 2024, PR 25-811, Office of Employee Appeals, LaShawn Adams Confirmation Resolution of 2024, and PR 25-820, Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, Darren P. Sobin Confirmation Resolution of 2024, and PR 25-821, Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, Felice C. Smith Confirmation Resolution of 2024. I will start by acknowledging that we're tad late, and as a result, we are going to make the exception and have Ms. Smith to present before we get to our public witnesses. But let me begin by making an official opening statement. Again, good morning, everyone. I'm at-large Council Member Anita Bonds, Chairperson of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor, and the time is 11:45 a.m. on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. And I'm calling to order this confirmation roundtable to consider the nominations that I just shared with you. In fact, the nominations will be deemed disapproved on November 10, 2024, unless we can forward a resolution of approval or disapproval, of course, as introduced. I will go through a few of these comments. The first appointment, as I mentioned, is for Jean Moorhead as a member of the Office of Employee Appeals. And this is an appointment that will fill a vacancy seat formerly held by Janea Freeman for the remainder of an unexpired term to end on April 6, 2028. The second appointment is that for LaShawn Adams, also a member of the Office of Employee Appeals, filling a vacancy formerly held by Peter Rosenstein for the remainder of an unexpired term that would end on April 6, 2030. Both nominations to the Office of Employee Appeals are new appointments. For the Board of Elections, for the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, we are examining the two reappointments. The first is the reappointment of Darren P. Sobin as a member of the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability for a term to end on July 1, 2030. And the second is for the reappointment of Felice C. Smith as a member of the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, also for a term to end on July 1, 2030. And before jumping into the background of these distinguished nominees, I'd like to provide the public with some background information about the agencies. Since we are committed to having Ms. Smith because she has another appointment on the docket, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, and then we'll hear from her, and then we'll move to our next matter of business. The Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, BEGA, investigates alleged ethics law violations by district government agencies and public officials. BEGA is comprised of two distinct offices, the Office of Open Government and the Office of Government Ethics. The Office of Open Government ensures compliance with the District of Columbia Open Meetings Act, which requires that all public bodies gathered to consider, conduct, or advise on public business take all official action during public meetings and provide proper notice and detailed records of their meetings. In addition to enforcement of the DC Open Meetings Act, the OOG advocates for fair and effective and efficient DC Freedom of Information Act, or the FOIA processing. The Office of Government Ethics, which investigates allegations of ethical misconduct concerning district government employees and officials. This office has authority over the district government's workforce of 34,000 employees, including ethics oversight of the mayor and the council. The office serves as the district's ethical prosecutor and is empowered to bring enforcement proceedings before the five-member board of ethics and government accountability, commonly referred to as BEGA, which in turn can levy civic penalties, including substantial monetary fines. That's a brief bird's eye view of the Office of Employee, at the Office for the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. And now, again, I would bring you some background information on our first nominee. Again, we're going out of order, and I do appreciate the patience of our public witnesses while we hear from our nominee for reappointment, Ms. Felice C. Smith. Ms. Smith is a licensed attorney that has been practicing nearly 20 years. She currently serves as the Vice President and Secretary to the Board for the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority, where she oversees the Office of the Board of Directors, which provides executive and administrative support services to the airport's authority's 17-member board of directors. She also serves as Associate General Counsel and Ethics Officer for the airport authorities, where she provides legal and ethics compliance advice to the board members, executive management, and over 1,700 employees. In this role, she also interprets and applies the code of ethics for the board of directors and employees. She is a Ward 5 resident and a graduate of Howard University School of Law. So I look forward to hearing from her, and so I am going to call her forward and swear her in, and we'll begin this show. Please come forward. Thank you very much. And if you would raise your right hand because you're still in service. Okay, all right. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. And you can proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Members and staff of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor. My name is Felice Smith, and it is with great pleasure and humility that I appear before you today as a nominee for reappointment to the District of Columbia Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. I would like to thank Mayor Bowser for the honor of this renomination, as well as you and your fellow council members for considering my nomination to serve a second term. I'm a native of Queens, New York, but have called the Washington, D.C. area home since I arrived here over 20 years ago to attend Howard University School of Law. When I decided to pursue a career in law, I knew that Washington, D.C. was the place to be. Throughout law school, I lived in several locations throughout the DC suburbs. However, when it came time to buy a home, start a family, our search for big lawns, easy access downtown, and neighbors we would come to know by name led us to settle right here in the district. I've been a proud resident of the Woodridge neighborhood in Ward 5 since 2014. I'm a duly registered voter without party affiliation, and am not active in any political organizations. I do not and have never held any office or position of employment in the government of the District of Columbia other than my initial appointment to BEGA. I currently serve as the Vice President and Secretary to the Board for the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. In this role, I oversee the Office of the Board of Directors, which provides executive and administrative support services to the Airports Authority's 17-member Board of Directors. As the authority's secretary, I'm responsible for performing the functions outlined in the authority's bylaws, which includes serving as the custodian of all official records, keeping accurate minutes of all meetings of the board and its committees, and ensuring the public receives timely notice of the time, place, and agenda for those meetings as required under the bylaws. I also serve as the Airports Authority's Freedom of Information Officer. Prior to being appointed in my current role, I served as Associate General Counsel and Ethics Officer for the Airports Authority, where I provided legal advice to the board members, executive management, and over 1,700 employees on ethics compliance, public safety, and airport security, and other corporate priorities related to the operation of Reagan National and Dulles International airports. In this role, I was responsible for interpreting and applying the codes of ethics for the board of directors and employees, keeping the organization's ethics codes up to date, ensuring best practices, reviewing annual financial disclosures and certification, providing ethics training for all board members and employees, receiving and investigating allegations of violations of the codes of ethics, and serving as primary support staff to the Board of Directors Ethics Review Committee. As the saying goes, public service is a public trust. Ethics, transparency, and accountability are the bedrock of public trust. I've dedicated my entire career to serving public institutions with a special emphasis on these issues. No government, whether federal, state, or local, can effectively fulfill its role if citizens cannot trust that government officials and employees are making decisions in the best interests of the people. DC residents need to be assured that our officials and employees are making decisions that serve the interests of the community. My vision for BEGA is to further develop a culture of accountability for district employees. As we all know, even the mere appearance of impropriety can hurt the public's trust and confidence. Over the past few years, I've had the privilege of serving as a board member for the district agency that has actively taken on the charge of articulating a clear code of ethical conduct, providing robust training in ethics and open government laws, promoting transparency in decision-making by public bodies, and ensuring a safe environment for reporting suspected violations. Serving as a BEGA board member truly embodies the perfect intersection of my professional skills, subject matter expertise in ethics and open government, and community service aspirations. I want to continue to bring these skills to BEGA to give back to my DC community in the way I can be most impactful. If confirmed to a second term, I will continue to bring to BEGA a passion for ethics and integrity and a dedication to public service. Thank you again for considering me once more for this opportunity. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I just have a few questions because this is a reappointment opportunity for you. But given your role, I am seeing it having the breadth of perhaps weighing in on the issue that was before our community, District of Columbia, as well as Northern Virginia. And that's the expansion of the new air routes, the service at Reagan National Airport. Am I correct in assuming that you were a part of that decision-making process?
The Airports Authority wouldn't have, that would have been on our Congress, our federal Congress.
All right. And so in order for Congress to make that determination, I'm pretty sure that they had some discussions with the airport authority. Am I correct? Or did they not? Did they just move without any discussion with the agency?
They would have had those discussions. I wouldn't say that they necessarily sought those opinions out from the Airports Authority. But we have a congressional affairs team that would have coordinated.
Okay, so they okay, so then did the airport authority provide information to Congress in order for them
Sure.
to reach their decision?
Sure.
All right. And did your office have any input in the information that was provided?
It wasn't something that I worked on. I started in the role that I am with respect to the board in March. So I probably would have been in the general counsel's office when a lot of that would have gone on. So that probably would have gone more directly through the general counsel and the executive staff at that
All
time.
right, so you're relatively new in this leadership role that you're
Yes.
performing now.
Yes.
Congratulations,
Thank
okay.
you.
All right, just thought I would inquire about that and ask you if you had headaches or concerns about how the arrangement was derived at. You,
Um, I don't personally, but I try to stay politically neutral. It really was, a lot of a political, issue, and my role is to support the board of directors. And so I don't typically get asked or involved with those types of issues. I'm more of a conduit in terms of, getting them the information that they need for the decisions, in front of them. Or if they were to receive inquiries and things like that directly from members of Congress, I would help to prepare responses to those. That hasn't come in front of me, in my
All
role
right.
since I've started.
all right, okay, so I can safely assume you were not in the ladies' room screaming in the mirror. That's a joke. Let me ask you then, I, I would assume then the general counsel's office would have provided some input regarding the recent proposal to locate area sports teams near the airport. You know, thinking about the terrain and the airport and sports arenas and height and what have you. Do you recall any discussions regarding that
None at all.
subject matter?
None at all. I don't think that that's airport property. So,
It is, but the airspace, you know,
oh, the,
yeah,
I-
you know.
if it
Here
was,
we go.
it wouldn't have,
Stadium airplanes coming in,
oh,
landing. Okay. All right,
it definitely didn't.
just
come
thought I
across.
would, um, ask from 50 feet up. Okay, we know what's going on. All right, we have your, questionnaire. I have just a few questions as it relates to the work that you may have been engaged in. Um, Tell me, as a member of Vega and up for reappointment, have there been any challenges that you have encountered as a member in order to do your deliberation or tell us how do you contribute to the work of Vega?
Well, each month there will be, an agenda for that month's meeting, and there will be, decisions in front of, us that will have been, um, prepared and, proposed by management. We have, a really good management, team for that agency. Usually we'll have not usually, we always have the materials in advance. And so we'll prepare questions if we want to, based on our background, our individual as board members' background and expertise. Also our experience with the agency and, the decisions that we would have seen from the past few years. In my case, I think that would be 5 or 6 years. We'll just, have follow-on questions just to ensure that the decision in front of the agency that we'd be making, would be the best one and consistent with past, practices.
So what are the nature of some of the questions that you've asked in these review of various cases?
For
I mean,
me,
what
I
are you
will,
mostly concerned with? I have been concerned with.
I wouldn't call it a concern, but the thing that I'd inquire about the most, probably, would be ensuring that, because Bega does have the, unusual power, I would say, to really prosecute and, their ethics laws have teeth that results in fines and things like that. I think it's just really important that, it's not just an admonition or some kind of, warning someone gets. There are real consequences that, could be made public and affect their reputation and their job position. So for me, I like to just ensure that the person, whatever was required in terms of notice of the rules and information about what they may have been, charged with, that were crossing Ts, dotting Is before that type of decision would be formalized. So I would follow up on factual if there's an investigation. If there were gaps in the information that I thought might be pertinent, I could follow up on that. Fairness is an important principle to me, so that would be the type of thing. Also, past precedent, so just ensuring that whatever is being proposed is fair and in terms of what penalties may have been applied in the past.
Thank you for that response. I note that you have some background in human resources personnel.
I have practiced administrative law for federal agencies for a long time, so that usually comes along with territory.
Okay.
It's not a I wouldn't say it's a area of expertise for me, but it's something I've
Okay.
definitely handled.
So I think you answered a few seconds ago in talking about ethics laws having teeth and affecting individuals' jobs. But what unique benefits would you as a board member bring to Vega and district residents? How do you see how you're helping our city move forward?
I think that I have the background, education, experience-wise, that is most helpful to review the decisions that Bega is going to issue. So that is a perfect fit in that sense. I think at this point, with this being my renomination, I think having the benefit of several years under my belt with experience specific to Bega and its rules is also very valuable. And of course, my willingness to serve. I don't think that everyone is necessarily willing to do that.
As you know, things have changed throughout the country, the world, for that matter. COVID just gave us a whole nother um, dimension, so to speak, that many feel. And I wondered if you have some thoughts about how we might approach some of these challenges, particularly when we think about personnel behavior, and the whole ethical, gamut that you're concerned with.
So one, I think, issue that's come up as a result of moving to more remote work, especially, during the pandemic when we were at the height of things and everything had gone virtual. I think some of the lines were blurred with respect to outside activities. So issues around dual employment, working, moonlighting essentially, particularly jobs that, you're in front of a computer all day anyway, like an IT job, for example. Some of those boundaries became a little unclear, and so some reinforcement of the rules and how they apply in those scenarios is something that Vega's found to be useful to help address those problems and head them off, because we're going to, remote work will continue to be a part of how the workforce is shaped everywhere going forward. So I would say that would be the main issue coming out of that, the main area.
And in your experience, what has been the, I guess, a largest accumulation of violations since the pandemic? You were speaking a little bit about the blurring of the lines and moonlighting. Just wondered if you could elaborate on that, or if there's another area. As you know, we're trying to get people back into the office or getting them back into a new normal. So just wonder what your findings have been.
I can't speak to numbers. The issue that I was just talking about with moonlighting and secondary employment is what stood out that we started to see more of during the pandemic. But I can't say here today in context whether the numbers show that that was the area where there were the most allegations and violations. So I can't speak to that right
All
here
right.
today without that data.
So you said that you review the decisions that Vega staff has determined. And in that review, does it come to mind, anything stand out as it relates to, the volume of types of decisions, one group over another group, or one group greater than the other group, or?
It doesn't offhand, except for what I probably just mentioned, which is I don't think we were seeing as much of the dual employment, the secondary employment problems coming up prior to going fully remote. Um, so that I would say is um, what stands out the most. And you were asking as compared to other types of ethics violations. I would say, and this is me guessing because again,
Yeah,
I'm not,
sure.
it's hard to sort of um, quantify and compare without being refreshed a little bit. So to me, that's what stood out.
All right. Um, Very well. Um, is there anything else about your background, your day job, so to speak, that you would like to share with us as it relates to how or your effectiveness as a Bega member?
I I don't think that there is. I'm still with the same
Okay.
organization. I am in a different role. It's not going to affect my participation with Vega.
Okay. Have you met with any of the staff of the open government or ethics um, offices?
Eh, within Vega,
Yes, of course.
have I met with them?
Yes. Do you meet with the staff, or is it that it's time for the meeting? You either do it virtually or you go in and you sit in a room, you deal with that, and then you're out the door.
Uh, I I don't interact with the staff
Okay.
unless it's related to something that they would be proposing that we would need to consider. I wouldn't have a meeting outside of a meeting, essentially.
Right.
I
Okay.
think the chair probably, I think the way that it's prescribed is that the chair gets involved with the administration of the agency, but that isn't a role for the other members.
All right. So as a board member, current board member, what do you consider some of your accomplishments as you are serving on this board?
I I share in the accomplishments of the agency generally. I wouldn't say you mean myself specifically.
Yeah, maybe you're there and you say, oh, well, you know, this is another situation where we have given the employee an opportunity to explain themselves. And so it's just like 5 others that I've looked at. And I know that the outcome, we're helping the employee to mind their ethics, so to speak, as opposed to saying, okay, here's, you know, this is a very fragrant violation and we're having to fine the person. So I'm saving people money, and I'm also helping people to understand what the law is, in other words. That's just my example. I have no idea. I'm not a baker. I'm just trying to create it here at the moment.
Um, I, I think we try to do that in every case. I don't want to speak specifically to any particular cases.
Mhm.
I think, but we always try to, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's important to me that especially when we're talking about penalties, that they're fair, that we can establish that, the employee was fully aware of whatever the rule may have been. Um, they had an opportunity to, um, well, it actually depends on the particular rule, but if the situation warrants that they had the opportunity to correct or at least um, uh, try to mitigate whatever the situation was. All of those are going to be factors when we're determining whether a penalty is appropriate and what that penalty should be. And I feel that that's something that I can speak probably for everyone on the board, that we're giving that care and attention to each matter.
And I do understand that, and I have no issue with what I'm hearing, or I have heard of no concerns or complaints about, your tenure. What I am trying to understand is, I think for everyone who does public service, because that's what this is, surely that, there must be some feeling of accomplishment. And so I'm just asking about that. I gave you an obscure kind of example because that's what popped in my head. But, I'm more interested in what brings satisfaction to you as it relates to doing this task.
Um, I would say that I enjoy the area. I mean, it's the reason that I practice in this area, and I always have practiced and specialized in this area, ethics especially. Um, I've always gravitated towards those roles, as I mentioned, through my background. I have always um, worked for agencies, public facing organizations. I consider myself a public servant. Those principles are important to me. Transparency is very important to me. So I feel as though I am bringing all of that to my role at Bega, and that it aligns with sort of my expertise, my passions in terms of the things that are important to me. I mean, I think it goes to values and values that are important to me. I mean, so I get the satisfaction of working with that subject matter and also serving the community, as I mentioned in my testimony. I'm not sure, uh, you know, I'm not sure how to answer better than that. There's not, um, I'm not getting anything personally. E- there's not, I think it's a public service, and I'm happy to contribute. And to me, this is the best way that I could contribute. There are other
Okay.
committees and other ways that I could do that. I think I would add the most value in this role.
All right. And so when you think about your top priorities for the for your next term, what what would you do differently, or what do you want to expand or um, embellish or make sure you don't do it again? What is it that what are your priorities, your goals?
I don't have any specific goals
Okay.
for my next term. I think the staff and the leadership at Bega is great. I think they do a good job. So I look forward to continuing to work with them in that capacity. They have robust training opportunities that they give to um, district-wide. The open government um, office, they also give a lot of trainings and they monitor all of the public meetings to make sure those are running properly and appropriate notice and everything is given so everyone's aware and can attend them. So it, it, sitting here, I can't state a specific goal that I would have right now.
Well, are there any cases or determination that you feel are particularly important or consequential to our government that Vega has made?
I don't want to speak about specific cases. I think all of the cases are important. I'm not sure if you're asking about a high profile case.
Not particularly. I'm really asking if there is something that has come to the board that you thought was particularly important or significant in the work that Vega does. That's really, I'm really I'm trying to come up with all kinds of ideas of ways to have you to just share who you are and how you function on Vega. Maybe I should just say that, put it out there. How do you function? Because I want the public to know the members that are wrestling with ethics in this new normal. Because I know it's different than it was 10 years or 20 years ago. So, and certainly when Vega was established. So just trying to give the public a better understanding of the work of Vega and the importance of Vega and its board.
Okay, can you repeat the question that you're asking me?
Is there anything that comes to mind that has been of particular significance that the board has had to look at and to, as you say, review the decision that Vega has made? And I don't know any of their decisions, so I'm just,
There's nothing that stands out to me
Okay.
right now. Yes.
all right. Anything regarding the Open Meetings Act or open meetings process? I think you've already described how you see that, but is there something that we would run across, or the Hatch Act? Trying to think of any other areas.
Whether there have been significant cases involving those.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, if you think that there's anything specific or significant about the Hatch Act, or, the way in which it's administered here in our government, or the Open Meetings Act, way it's administered.
I don't have anything to
Okay,
report out
all right,
in this moment about how the Open Meetings Act or
Okay.
is administered.
all right.
Yep.
And these are now questions from your questionnaire. Do you or any member of your immediate family have any interest, financial or otherwise, that may directly or indirectly pose a conflict of interest for you in the performance of your duties?
No,
Okay, have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics or unprofessional conduct by or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group.
No,
Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for misconduct in the workplace?
no.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to get some of the questions on the record, for your record. Thank you very much, and it's
Okay.
very nice meeting
It's
you.
nice meeting you as well. Thank you.
And I hope I'm getting you out of here in good time for your 1 o'clock meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And keep the airways moving, you know.
Oh, okay. We'll try to do that.
All right.
It's important.
Very nice to meet you. Don't do that. We will now transition quickly back to the public witnesses. And I believe, who is it? All right, we have Ms. Tiffany Montgomery. Ms. Montgomery, I'm so sorry for the delay, but we can take your testimony now if you're ready.
I'm calling by phone.
That's fine, and we hear you. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Bonds and members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today before this committee. I have serious concerns about the previous nominee. As director of your committee, Mr. Kevin Chavis is aware, the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability was referred for criminal investigation by 2 separate DC government agencies, specifically the Compliance Division of the DC Department of Human Resources and the DC Metropolitan Police Department. Board member Felice Smith initially misrepresented her qualifications as a duly qualified attorney. As required by law, she was supposed to notify potential employers and even the public that she was not duly licensed in the District of Columbia in her initial nomination, which was sometime in May of 2019. Ms. Smith did not become a licensed attorney in the district until sometime in December of 2023. And I provided you and the committee and as well as other DC council members proof of that from the DC Bar and the DC Superior Court. My biggest issue is Ms. Smith failed to properly conduct her oversight of BEGA in her role as a BEGA board member. Not only was she aware of the 2 separate criminal investigation referrals, she also intentionally and willfully ignored the serious inefficacies at BEGA as an operation as a whole. My former supervisor, Director of Office of Open Government, Nikhil Allen, was habitually absent from work, and that allowed a lot of fraud and mismanagement at the agency. My former colleague, attorney advisor, Johnny Barton, misused his BEGA office in order to illegally operate a private law firm out of the BEGA office. And Ms. Smith was advised of this information and she failed to act as required by law. So I wanted the committee and the public to be aware of this information during this reappointment nomination hearing. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today about Ms. Smith, and I look forward to testifying about Mr. Darren Sobin soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We had two other public witnesses on our lineup, but they're not here, and I can imagine we're so late. So now we will go. No, ma'am, you don't. Okay. All right. I think what we'll do, we're talking about the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. So we will then move to our next government witness, which is Mr. Darren Sobin. If you are available, Mr. Okay, you're coming up. All right. Mr. Sobin is virtual, as was our public witness, Ms. Montgomery. So, Mr. Sobin, we will receive your testimony now, but first, please let me swear you in. All right. Would you raise your right hand? All right. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
I do.
All right, thank you very much, and you can proceed with your statement, sir.
Good morning, Chairperson Mons
Morning.
and members of the committee. I am Darren Sobin, and it is my pleasure to receive your consideration for my nomination to serve on the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. I am grateful to Mayor Muriel Lee Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of our district. Thank you to this committee for holding this roundtable hearing today. It has been my great honor and privilege to serve on the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability for the last 6 years. As you know, I had the equally distinguished privilege of having served as the inaugural director of what was then a fledgling agency created in 2012. It was with mixed feelings that I left the director's chair in 2017 to accept an invitation to join the executive team of the DC Bar. So I was thrilled when the mayor invited me back as a board member shortly thereafter. I believe that my qualifications and credentials were well vetted at that time, but I'm happy to go over them again for this esteemed body's consideration. I was raised in the District of Columbia and attended grade school, high school, college, and law school here, graduating from what is now the UDC David A. Clark School of Law. I've been an attorney for almost 30 years, having been admitted to the DC Bar in 1995. I have worked in government, private practice, and now in the nonprofit world during that time. But regardless of my employer, I have always had a bent for professional ethics. In my early career, I worked for the DC Bar's Office of Disciplinary Counsel, then in private practice, defending against ethics violations by attorneys, and then as the government ethics counselor for the District of Columbia when I was at the Office of the Attorney General for the District of Columbia, or OAG. While with OAG, I had the honor of serving under 3 different mayors and 4 different attorneys general as a member of the office's respected legal counsel division. As I said, it was my great honor in 2012 to be invited to apply for the position of Director of Government Ethics for the newly created Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. I had watched with great interest as the idea of such a board wound its way through the legislative process. I believed then, as I do now, the incredible importance of such an oversight body to the principles of good and transparent government and ultimately to the residents of the District of Columbia. My time as director of this new agency was professionally fulfilling to me as well. In addition to setting up an entire disciplinary system from scratch, this position gave me the opportunity to speak and write on the issue of government ethics on a national level. When the National Association of Attorneys General invited me to draft a chapter in their publication entitled The Anti-Corruption Manual, a Guide for State Prosecutors, I readily accepted. And I believe it was this experience with BEGA that also resulted in my addition to the DC Bar's executive team, where, among other things, I oversee the Lawyer Regulation Council Department, which consists of the Legal Ethics Program, the Lawyers Assistance Program, which deals with mental health and substance abuse issues, the Attorney-Client Arbitration Board, and of course, the Client Security Fund. The DC Bar is now the largest integrated bar in the United States, with over 117,000 lawyer members in all 50 states and 84 countries. When I look around at the BEGA offices now, I'm in awe of how far we've come. I still remember my first weeks on the job as director, ordering pens, pencils, notepads, and computers. Now I see a bustling office with dedicated employees continuing this mission of good government, now in its 12th year. It is a testament to the mayor, this legislative body, that the office is well-resourced and supported as it seeks to instill a culture of ethics and transparency at all levels of the district government. I would be so pleased if I could continue to have the opportunity to be a part of this effort. Thank you, Chairperson Bonds, for the opportunity to testify before this committee today. I would be happy to respond to any questions from you or the other committee members. Thank you. I'm sorry, the audio does not seem to be working. Chairperson Bonds?
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, now
All
I can
right.
hear.
Okay, all right. Another one of those little technical glitches we faced today throughout the building, by the way. Thank you for bearing with me. I was saying thank you for your service and thank you for appearing before us today, and for your testimony. I wanted to do a couple of things since you are one of the, at least we consider you one of the creators of this BEGA, as we call it, okay? And so just wanted to make sure that we are on top of what BEGA does. Can you please help the public to understand the far-reaching duties of BEGA from your perspective?
Sure. So BEGA was envisioned as a sort of a one-stop shop, and when it was created. And one of the things that was made very clear to us in the beginning was this was not supposed to be a gotcha agency. And we looked all around the country for best practices in this field of ethics and good government and these kinds of oversight bodies that were starting to spring up around that time. And we looked at New York, especially, which had a very good model. And the executive director in New York spoke to us. We spoke to him, got recommendations. And ultimately, what was envisioned was an agency where we would provide, we would have a good code of ethics, one that was easy to understand and enforceable, and easily, known by rank and file folks. The second thing was education of those rules, because again, we did not want to be a gotcha agency where if somebody violated a technical rule, that we would then say, oh, that's a violation, we gotcha. And so education was key. And I did more training than I think I've ever done in my life when we started BEGA. And then the third thing, of course, is where those efforts fail, there's got to be an enforcement mechanism. There's got to be some teeth to all this. And really, we wanted to reserve that for the bad actors, not the folks that, inadvertently would fall astray. And so that's, in a nutshell, I think, kind of how this whole great experiment in good government was conceived.
Thank you very much. As you were speaking, I was just quickly taking a look at Law 1-1162 and the composition point 03 and the terms and et cetera. And one of the things that I wanted to inquire about it says that a board member shall not make speeches for a political, a district political organization or candidate, or publicly endorse or oppose a District of Columbia candidate for public office. What does that really mean when we know it's sometimes difficult as a government to be in a situation where individuals are constantly advocating for one position over the other? How does Vega interpret this clause?
Well, that was intended to kind of remove the political aspect of this. They didn't want this organization to be one that would be used in a way to go after one political party or the other. And the way to do that is to ensure that the folks that are on the board are not really politically active, that the folks that are appointed to this position are non-political folks, just good citizens who want to do their best for their government. And so you can't really say, well, you can't vote for the person you want. I mean, this is our democracy, but I think they decided that they should go so far as to say you really shouldn't be active politically when it comes to supporting or endorsing particular candidates. That's what I think was going on there.
All right, and then the other one, number 5, use his or her status as a member to directly or indirectly attempt to influence any decision of the district government relating to any action that is not within the board's purview.
Oh, yeah. That's another one. I think that's an attempt to make sure that lobbyists don't get on the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, is because you don't want to walk in and say, I'm Darren Sobin, board member, and I think that what you should be doing with the housing situation or the homeless situation is XYZ, because you don't want to be lending the weight of the office to something that is not relevant to it.
All right, and then the next one underneath, it says, during the member's tenure on the board, be convicted of having committed a felony in the District of Columbia, or if the crime is committed elsewhere, convicted of an offense that would have been a felony if it had been committed in the District of Columbia. What does that really mean?
I think if you're serving on the board and you're out there engaged in criminal activity, you really shouldn't be on the board. I think that's what it attempts to get at.
All right, okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure that we understand what the qualifications are, because as you know, we did receive written testimony that puts some light on your background, Mr. Sobin. I would be remiss if I didn't put it on the record. So I would really like for you to just take a moment to give us an update on who you are and how you find your career these days, and just simply reference some of the your difficult background that has been presented to us.
Sure. It's always difficult to talk about these things, as you can expect, especially 40 years after the fact. But people blame their decisions in life on their childhood and things like that. But they're honestly, I was on a path that was not a good one. Both of my parents did significant time in prison, and I was headed down that path as well until, thankfully, I was able to pull back a little bit. When I was during my teenage years, and I'll say this is well documented in the public record. There is a case in Ray Sobin that was issued by the D.C. Court of Appeals in 1995. The D.C. Court of Appeals took a look at my life as when I was a teenager. They looked at the criminal activity, and they looked at the fact that that my criminal record was expunged under the Youth Corrections Act. I believe they also looked at the fact that I received a presidential pardon, and they decided that I was a person of good moral character, sufficient to practice law in the District of Columbia. And that occurred in 1995. And I would like to say, I hope in that time I have lived up to their expectations of me in the way I've pursued my life, my career, and as a resident of this district in an effort to give back what's been given to me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you making hard comments but we need it for the record because all of the information that we receive is a part of the record. And I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to deal with that. So now I will really quickly go through just some basic questions. You have served as, well, one of the founding fathers of this organization, as well as chair of its board, and just wondered, how do you communicate with the staff of this two-legged stool? I mean, as a board member, are you how do you talk to the separate entities and know that you're communicating the sense of the board?
Okay, so I do have a dual perspective here because when I was director, um, I had to deal with board members and make sure they were well informed, make sure that I had their support so that I could run the office. And so as a board member myself now, I do try to respect the role of our two directors to run the staff. Nonetheless, I did hire a bunch of the staff that are there now. And so from time to time, I run into them and we chat about things. And so, unlike Ms. Smith, who really didn't have that experience, and probably shouldn't have that experience with the staff, I do sometimes.
Okay. Um, During your involvement at Vega, have there been situations where board members differ with the decisions made by the staff?
Correct.
Does it happen frequently?
No, not really frequently, but it is important. It is very important that the board pushes back on the staff. And we do. We do. For me, obviously, when I was director, I wanted my board members to agree with me all the time. But even as director, I knew that that was not a good idea, and that's why I pushed for the position of an attorney for the board itself, because we needed that voice in the room when the two directors were saying something to us. We needed a voice on our end to make sure that the staff, that we were getting the full picture. And thankfully that position still exists today.
All right, and have there been any, in your opinion, any significant cases that have been before the board, let's say in the last 5 years, as an example?
You mean in an instance where we said no and they said yes?
Well, let's just talk about significant cases, and then you can say if there was some difference of opinion as
I
it
see.
related to the case.
Let's see. We had a case recently, and Ms. Smith went into this a bit about this new normalcy that we have, this new norm when it comes to outside work. And it's a real conundrum because in so many places, especially on social media, folks brag about having a side hustle or a separate job. especially in this remote work environment, makes it a lot easier to get away with something like that. And it almost seems cool to do it. But that's in the private sector. That is not the case in government. In government, it's a theft of time and services and money, if you're a government employee in doing that. And we need to make our employees across the government understand how important and critical that is, that distinction. And so the cases that we've been reviewing lately are really before the pandemic, it was much more about financial conflict of interest and gift giving and stuff like that. Now it's and some nepotism, but now it's much more about these side hustle services things. And I think the way to get to that is not through prosecution in every case. I think the way to get to that is through education.
All right, well, get to it through education. Um, One of the issues that is within my committee is thinking about how we return to the work world. In other words, sort of limit the remote work and have things more similar to how we worked prior to the pandemic. And so, do you have any thoughts about that? How Bega would look at how we're trying to get employees back into the work world again? At least, I would say 35 hours of their work week devoted to the district, as you said, since there are so many that are doing side hustles.
Yeah, I do think it's important to have folks in the office. And I think the mayor issued a return to the office mandate recently. But I also think we need to be flexible. Folks now are used to doing more remote work. And in a lot of cases, it does make sense. People save on their commuting time and so forth. And so I do get that part of it. Everything has its place. For us at Bega, we're less concerned about someone who is, instead of sitting in front of their computer, they're outside, walking around the block. We're not as concerned about that as we are the person that has dual jobs. One is an assistant principal here in DC, and another job is an assistant principal in Rhode Island, which was actually one of our cases. That's the thing that we're concerned about. Now, had he been back in the office full-time in DC, that would not have happened. So I do get that. I think returning to the office is important. It helps our job, but also education about these side hustle things is important as well.
All right, well, thank you for that. I can hardly wait to learn more about how we handle side hustles because, as you said very succinctly, I'm pretty sure it's a difficult arena for the government to tread in. But I'm going to look to Bega for some guidance as we put together a legislative package that hopefully will bring us all back together more frequently than we seem to be today. So thank you.
Sure.
What are some of the current issues or trends when it comes to enforcement of the Open Meetings Act? Anything come to mind?
Well, the office is doing something that I think is really a good idea. When the Office of Open Government was set up, it was awkward because what essentially had to be done was, if there was a meeting that was going on that was in violation of the Open Meetings Act, the director of the Office of Open Government would have to run into court, get some sort of an injunction to stop the meeting from happening and to force them to comply with the open meetings rules. Now, you could see the awkwardness there with, some small group that's getting together. And so it really never happened. What ended up happening was that we would get notice about meetings that were closed or not properly noticed. And then you'd have to work with the agency in order to figure out why they were doing it, to make sure they didn't do it again in the future, and to really make sure they understood the Open Meetings Act rules. But we were still, even then, we were still being reactive. And so it was only when someone complained that we could look into it. What the office is doing now, I'm really quite proud of. They are doing these audits, sort of, I call it audit for lack of a better term, but they're actually proactively going out there and looking for situations in which agencies are, or boards and commissions are not in full compliance. And they're not doing it as a gotcha. They're doing it as a, hey, we noticed this on your website, that this wasn't properly noticed. And then they work with them. And in most cases, the board or commission is happy to have their assistance in helping them, because a lot of these places don't have a general counsel or an ethics officer. And so those folks do need assistance. And so it's getting with our mission again of not being a gotcha agency, but one that is representative of the best government practices, especially transparency.
All right, and so likewise, how do you, what are the current issues or trends when it comes to enforcement of the Hatch Act?
The Hatch Act? I mean, the Hatch Act has been around forever. When I was director, I had some good, I got good direction from the federal government folks. We used them a bit. I mean, the Hatch Act is pretty clear. There are things you can do and you can't do. And I don't recall ever having oh, I did have one successful Hatch Act case when I was director, but I think it was only one. And that was a situation where a respondent had held a fundraiser. Details are escaping me at the moment, but it was a very clear situation. In other words, I didn't even need witnesses. It was just a clear violation, and the person, the respondent, realized they had made a mistake. Worked out a negotiated disposition, and the case was over.
All right, well, thank you for that. As you are renominated for your position, do you see any challenges that the agency must face as we move forward in this new normal?
We all have challenges. Every government agency. For BEGA, I really am pleased over the years to see how well you and the mayor, and I say you meaning the council, and our committee chairs over the years have supported this what really is a great experiment in good government. No one knew if it was going to be successful. And here we are, 12 years later, and I still see it as one of the most important efforts, one of the most important agencies in the entire district government, because everything starts with personal accountability and professional accountability. And then we can talk about things like budget or housing or crime. But if the people that serve the district aren't personally accountable, then you're really starting way behind the 8 ball.
All right, thank you. And now I'll turn to questions that you received from your questionnaire. Okay, do you or any member of your immediate family have any interest, financial or otherwise, that may directly or indirectly pose a conflict of interest for you in the performance of your duties?
I do not.
Have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics for unprofessional conduct by or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee or other professional group?
I have not, and if I have been, it has never come to my attention.
Okay. Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for misconduct in the workplace? Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for violating a security rule or policy?
No, I have not.
All right. Well, just 1 second. All right, well, we thank you for your testimony. And thank you very much, Mrs. Sylvan.
May I be excused, or
Um,
is this continuing?
Yes, you are. We were just alerted that there's another Sobin that wants to provide some testimony, so.
So I should, shall I, shall I remain on the line
Your
or?
testimony is complete, so thank you very much,
Okay.
sir. All right.
Thank you. I will roll off the call. Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you. All right. All right. Now we will turn to the second organization we're examining today, and that will be the Office of Employee Appeals. And let me just rather quickly give you a little synopsis of the Office of Employee Appeals. It is an independent administrative adjudicatory agency that processes appeals filed by the district government workforce. And that is the 34,000 employees of this government. The office consists of a 5-member board, an executive director, and a general counsel's office, an administrative support team, and a team of 6 administrative judges. The OEA, as it's commonly referred to, has jurisdiction over appeals in which an employee has been removed as a result of an adverse action or cause, placed on enforced leave, or suspended for 10 days or more, subjected to a reduction in force, or appeals affecting safety sensitive positions. The nominees today that are before us are Janine Moorhead. And Ms. Moorhead is an experienced human resources professional. Excuse me, please. So sorry. With expertise in organizational development, employee relations, strategic workforce planning, employee engagement, and has a background rooted in the private sector. Currently, Ms. Moorhead is the Vice President of Thermo Fisher Scientific, and previously held leadership positions within the human resources at Intel, Wells Fargo, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ms. Moorhead is a Ward 1 resident and obtained her Bachelor's of Arts, followed by her Master's of Arts in Labor Relations and Human Resources from the University of Illinois. Our additional nominee today is Ms. LaShawn Adams. Ms. Adams is an award-winning human resources leader with over 30 years of experience in organizational management, talent acquisition, employee relations, labor relations, and employee development within the federal government. Ms. Adams has a professional background that stems heavily from the federal government. Currently, she serves as the program manager at the Federal Aviation Administration. In her capacity as program manager, Ms. Adams oversees human resources, policies, and programs with an emphasis on workforce development, succession planning, and diversity principles. Ms. Adams was also the Director of Human Resources at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and Supervisory Resources specialist at the government printing office. Ms. Adams is a Ward 8 resident who graduated from Howard University with a Bachelor's of Science degree. And so we will examine these nominees. Now we'll first ask, do we have, okay, Ms. Moorhead is on virtually, and so Ms. Moorhead, we'll hear from you now, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can begin when you're ready. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and esteemed members of the committee. I am honored to appear before you today as a nominee for the Office of Employee Appeals. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to Mayor Muriel E. Bowser for nominating me and providing this opportunity to serve the employees of the District of Columbia. My name is Jean Moorhead. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. However, my personal and professional journeys have taken me to various parts of the Midwest and the West Coast. I came to Washington, D.C. as a reluctant trailing partner. However, today I proudly call Ward 1 my home and have been actively involved as a volunteer at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture for the past 6 years. Professionally, I am a seasoned human resources professional with a master's degree in human resources and labor relations. I hold certifications as a senior professional in human resources, SPHR, and global professional in human resources, GPHR, which underscore my expertise in the field. Throughout my 30-year career, spanning various industries, including consumer product goods, technology, financial services, consulting, and scientific services, I have gained extensive experience in employment law, harassment prevention, workplace violence, and employee relations. In my current role as Vice President, Human Resources for a publicly traded scientific services company, I lead comprehensive human resources programs to enhance organizational performance. I collaborate closely with leadership and centers of excellence, including Employment Council, to attract, engage, retain, and develop talent. My career has equipped me with a deep sense of the employee life cycle, encompassing onboarding, training, employee investigations, dispute resolution, performance management, policy development, and successful offboarding. Central to my philosophy and approach is ensuring fairness, confidentiality, and respect for all parties involved. Over the last 3 decades, I've garnered extensive experience in work that involves a comprehensive understanding of the employee life cycle. As a vital aspect of this, I've dealt with and overseen numerous employee investigations and dispute resolutions, always ensuring that the process is handled with fairness, confidentiality, and respect for all involved. I've led thorough reviews of organizational design and structure, evaluated roles, promotion criteria, internal equity, written policies, reviewed compensation complaints, and developed best practices for a safe, productive workplace. In essence, no matter my title, my job and my passion has always been to ensure that the fundamental rights of employees are upheld and that their voices are heard. You may wonder why I, a corporate professional, seek a role in local government. Simply put, the employees of the District of Columbia are also my neighbors, and I feel a profound connection to this community. I'm committed to leveraging my skills and experience to contribute meaningfully to the Office of Employee Appeals. I also recognize there are differences in governmental processes, procedures, and regulations. I'm dedicated to continuous learning and adapting to the specific norms and procedures of the District of Columbia. I believe my diverse experiences uniquely qualify me to serve on the board of the Office of Employee Appeals. My vision is to uphold the highest standards of fairness, integrity, and transparency in all proceedings. In conclusion, I'm deeply committed to serving the District of Columbia and contributing to the employee appeals process. I'm eager to bring my professional expertise, passion for fair labor practices, dedication to service, and commitment to impartiality to this important role. Thank you for considering my nomination, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for accepting this nomination and welcome this morning to chat with us. Ms. Moorhead, I wanted to ask of you some of the questions that I've shared with others before us, and I'll start with your response on the questionnaire you received. If I can find it fast enough. All right, here we go. Do you or does any member of your immediate family have any interest financially or otherwise that may directly or indirectly pose a conflict of interest for you in the performance of your duties as a member of this body?
No,
Have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for breach of ethics, for unprofessional conduct by, or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group?
no,
Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for misconduct in the workplace?
no,
Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for violating a security rule or policy?
no.
All right. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now we can talk about the goals and what's important as you look to being a member of the Office of Employee Affairs. And so may I ask you, when we talk about the background and the important role this office plays, can you share with us your understanding of the breadth of responsibility that this office has to the employees of the district?
I can. So my understanding is that this office hears appeals that are submitted by employees who were terminated, disciplined, or somehow suspended for what may have been a wrongdoing. And this office hears those appeals and then renders a decision.
And so in executing your responsibility, what will you be looking for, given that these are situations where a decision has been rendered and now these individuals are saying, oh no, that's wrong. And I must have another set of eyes, another set of thoughts about, my situation. And I want to get back to work, or I want to have my job back.
So first, I would be an objective third party. I mean, one of the things that's appealing about this office is that it allows a totally unbiased and objective group of people to review both the reason for what might be a termination or the disciplinary act, and also consider if all the rules, regulations, and policies were followed. And so we can do that objectively and render a decision again objectively.
Thank you. So how will you as a board member approach the challenges of, as we've been talking about this morning, this post-pandemic times, while also trying to balance the needs of really uplifting our workforce and making sure that employees feel safe and comfortable just engaging with agencies that can make a decision about their income, because that's
Mhm.
basically what this is.
Can you repeat the first part of your question?
Yes,
Sorry.
it's really, how do you approach this challenge? What's your thought process about, you know, in servitude, so to speak, on this important body?
My thought process is really one around fairness. So I think that any appeals would be heard with a fair ear and certainly with an understanding of what the rules and regulations are. As far as this new world, this new work world that we are now in, I do think one of the important pieces that not only the District of Columbia, but many employers will need to consider is just what's again what's fair, but also clarity on who is remote and what does remote mean? What does remote work mean? What roles, I should say, not the person, but the role is what role can be eligible for remote work or continued remote work. And then I think, first and foremost, it's also about productivity. So are people still productive with their roles while they are working remote or in some hybrid situation?
All right. Do you have an opinion on how the agency would adjudicate claims involving, let's say, vendors? That's another part of the work that happens in government. In fact, a third of our financial resources go to vendors, if not more.
So I see there being a distinction between who's considered an employee and actually on the payroll of the District of Columbia, and who's actually a vendor with for the District of Columbia. Um, so there's definitely a distinction. If there's a line crossed where a vendor now is acting or seems to appear as if he is an employee, then I again see reviewing all the details and facts related to that, certainly understanding what the rules of the contract, that vendor's contract may be, and then acting accordingly.
All right, so do you believe that the agency should have authority over claims involving vendors?
I think it's a fine line, and I think it depends on, you okay?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
good. Thank you. So sorry.
No problem. I think it's a fine line, and I think it depends on the circumstances. So again, there are times where vendors sometimes blur the lines and sometimes look and seem like they are employees. And in that case, I can see where one might this might come to the office because of another employee's perception of that. And so I can certainly see a scenario where that might happen. But generally speaking, I see the two populations as very different and distinct.
Thank you very much for your comment. Have you met with any of the staff or board members of the office yet?
I have not.
All right. Okay, so what's your plan for fostering effective communications within this office? Um, what's your style? How are you going to maneuver yourself? You're possibly new to this board. What's going to happen?
Absolutely. So first, I need to understand the inner workings, and so that's something that I'm committed to doing. Second, I'll answer your other question about my style. My style is very direct. I believe in transparency. I believe in direct communication, and that's how I've approached my career, and that's how I live my life. So I would be very open and transparent in my general communication, both written and verbal.
Here's a tough question. All right, based on your experience, how have you handled the issues involving workplace culture?
I am of the strong opinion that leaders and managers own workplace culture. I know that there are some who might disagree, and I respectfully, am open to that discussion. But they set the tone, they set the goals for the organization, they set they're sometimes responsible for or have input on the rules. They certainly, and regulations, they certainly adhere to them, and they usually are the ones that are communicating them. So I think they're the ones that set the culture. Leadership and people who manage teams, manage organizations. So it's an important role that I frankly think is often misunderstood. They don't, sometimes leaders don't often see how maybe their behaviors or their responses or lack of response can contribute to a poor culture. So to go back to the first part of your question, how would my approach is always to have that direct communication and interaction with the with leaders and with managers to talk about how they're, again, setting the tone, setting the stage for how they expect colleagues to interact with each other, interact with themselves, how they, show up in the workforce. And I would coach and advise them on some of the things that I've seen be successful in other organizations.
Thank you again for that comment. As you were speaking, I was thinking about, the awesome role that this board plays. And I wonder, in looking at the appeals, if there is room to consider the culture in which a situation occurred. And how would the OEA look at that? Or what would be your thoughts on how you might look at workplace culture as a part of, I guess, the solution as much as perhaps what caused the situation?
It, I think it's something to certainly consider. I do think, though, that it might be difficult to assess culture because I'm sure the District of Columbia has a culture, but then each individual department or organization within the District of Columbia has a culture depending on the work they do, depending whether, they're mostly outside or, outside of a building or actually inside. So but I do think that that's certainly a consideration set that we can take into consideration. I do think first and foremost, it'll be what are, if someone's complaining about I was treated or believes I was treated unfairly, I was terminated or dismissed unjustly. I think first and foremost, it's what happened and what are the rules around how we would handle this matter in that particular organization.
Thank you. Regarding decision making, how do you think, or how do you see, what's your approach for difference of opinion, let's say between board members and the administrative judges?
Open and direct communication and discussion. I think everyone has an opinion. I certainly always learn when I hear from people who have dissenting or differing opinions from my own. I think an opportunity to openly hear and openly discuss each person's point of view is more than effective. And
Right.
there will be times where I call it disagree and commit. Like there may be we don't always completely disagree or sorry, agree, but it can certainly commit to maybe a majority situation.
All right. Regarding this decision-making process, I also need to ask, what happens, what's your thought about if a difference of opinion is between the board and the executive director of the agency? which is now we're talking at the very pinnacle.
Again, open discussion. Let's understand where each person, where the board is and where the executive director is, and let's try to resolve any conflict that we have. Again, I'm, in going back to my communication style, it tends to be very direct. I like to get things on the table and let's talk things through and move forward in a way that everyone feels while everyone doesn't always get their way, everyone feels like they've been heard.
All right. And so do you see the board as a team? And then there is the other team, which is the office staff led by the executive director? Or do you see the office and board together being a team? Just
One team.
One team.
One team.
Smart answer. All right. Thank you for that. Okay. What goals do you have for your tenure? And you've talked a little bit about how you'll accomplish your goals, but maybe, pull it into the goals that you think you can attribute to during your tenure.
I think one would be to first, for me, my own personal goal is to learn some of the rules and regulations. This is a new space for me. Government is not something that I've not worked in government before. So understanding the rules that could apply broadly. So that's my first goal. As far as with in the position, it would be to certainly hear all matters that are brought forward to the board with objectivity and impartiality, and whether or not there would always be a lens of whether or not people have been treated fairly. And that would be the main thing that I would be looking for, and main goal is to make sure every decision was reviewed with objectivity and fairness.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And is there anything else you would like us to put on the record about your opportunity to serve on this board?
Just that I am, again, a proud Ward 1 resident, and I look forward to serving my community in this way. So appreciate your consideration, and I hope this is successful.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we will we'll say good day to you, and we'll now hear from Ms. LaShawn Adams.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, members of the committee, and staff. My name is LaShawn Adams. It is my pleasure to stand before you and testify today. I am humbled at the opportunity to serve on the Commission for the DC Government's Office of Employee Appeals. I am a current Washingtonian residing in Ward 8. I was born and raised in Southeast Washington, DC, and have lived in Wards 7 and 8 for the past 55 years. I am a member of the New United Baptist Church, as well as a member of the Anacostia Coordinating Council. Additionally, for the past 6 years, I have served as the president of 2 condominium associations in Southeast Washington, D.C. that have over 75 units. I was educated in the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., where I attended Our Lady of Perpetual Help Elementary School in Southeast and graduated from Holy Spirit High School in Northeast, formerly St. Cecilia's High School, in 1987. In 1994, I received my Bachelor of Science degree in finance from Howard University. My first job, even as a high school intern, were in government service at the Peace Corps headquarters, then as a college intern for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and then the Department of Justice. After graduating from Howard, I started my career with the federal government as a human resources assistant at DOJ's main HR office. I have served in various HR roles for a range of federal government agencies, including the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, the Government Printing Office, to the Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration. I am eager to serve the district government too. I would be a strong candidate for the commission as I have 35 years of federal experience serving in various HR positions throughout the federal sector. I've been awarded the highest level award from the Department of Justice's Justice Management Division. Also, I served on several award-winning federal intra and interagency committees. I attended various HR leadership as well as executive leadership programs. My HR experience includes, but is not limited to, areas such as staffing, training and development, employee and labor relations, mentoring, payroll, human capital, retirement and benefits, equal opportunity employment, FOIA, etc. I have worked to bridge gaps between managers, local labor unions, and employees on a variety of issues, resulting in effective solutions for all parties. My work philosophy is to be creative in everything I do for the workplace or any organizations where I volunteer my time. Though I understand that the key criteria for a board member for the Office of Employee Appeals is not so much creativity as an ability to apply the appropriate law to the facts to reach the legally appropriate resolution. At work, I pride myself on developing unique solutions to complex workplace problems, as I am very passionate about helping the workplace be the best place it can be for all parties. My intent has always been to get people to a place where they love their work, respect their workplace and its policies, work cohesively with their coworkers and managers, and complete the mission of the agency effectively. My goal is always to bring people together to resolve problems fairly and objectively. If appointed to the commission, I will bring a sense of fairness and justice to the commission. I will strive to be as objective and fair as possible with all parties involved. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for being a candidate for this board. Ms. Adams, I wanted to ask you, you talk a little bit about your 35 years of federal experience in various HR positions. Can you, of these different roles or staffing opportunities that you fulfill, can you tell me what you enjoyed the most?
What I enjoyed the most about these positions was helping people. And as I stated earlier, I had a degree in finance, and so I was always focused on numbers. But then once I got into the Department of Justice's HR office, I learned a lot about HR and about helping people to either get their paychecks correct, or to get them processed through security, or to help managers deal with problem employees, to develop policies that worked for the good of the agencies as well as for the employees. I got a good sense of just helping people being in the HR positions, such as the HR specialist, the HR generalist, and the HR directors and the HR managers. I just really grown to like the HR field because, again, it gave me that sense of I'm helping people.
So please tell us, how do you handle a irate employee who just knows that they are always right and never wrong, no matter what the circumstances? I want to hear how you bring them to their knees.
That's a very hard job. But one case we had where there was an employee who, just as you said, was irate. And rather than calling the security, I asked the manager to let the employee calm down, put him in an office by himself, and let me talk to him, and let one of the other high-level officials come and talk to him, just calm him down, to hear what he was so irate about, to find out what the issue was, and if we contributed to it, or was it something that was stemming from, say, home, a personal matter. And we let him sit in the office for about 20 minutes. He calmed down, gave him something to drink, and we sat down and talked. And we didn't talk as a manager fussing at the employee saying how. We talked as an individual person caring about this particular employee. And that employee appreciated that because what he was faced with was one of his managers continuing to badger him about something that he felt was very minute, something that he felt was not a big issue at all. And at the end of it, it was a very small, minor issue. And we talked with the manager, and then we brought both of them together to sit down and say, how can we resolve this matter without it blowing up again? And it worked out really well for both of us, both of the employees and me and the executive manager.
So, Miss Adams, thank you very much for that. And as you were speaking, I was wondering, are we thinking with you on the board that the OEA will move into a realm of mediating appeals and therefore, how do I put it, reconditioning both the complainant and the so-called person who is charged with offending the complainant, so that you bring about cooperation and a collaborative decision that I guess causes the complaint to just disintegrate, disappear.
Well, that would be good if it would disappear. But my goal is that if I get on the board, for me, it has always been, how can we prevent it from getting to this position? If there's something that the board can do, or there's information that we can look at and say, hey, what we've looked at and noticed is that this particular manager, I could say, has 5 or 6 complaints, and they're coming to the Board of Appeals. What can we do to kind of help prevent the manager or the individual, the cases from getting to this point? What can we do as a board? What can we look at to kind of help the DC government and all of its components of DC government? What is something that we can put in place to prevent it? My goal is to work hard, to work smarter and not harder. And so if we can all work together as a board and with the general counsel's office to see what we can do to prevent it from getting to that point, I think that's a goal that we can look at. I think it will be fair for all parties. I like to look at cases objectively and fairly, and to see what we can do. Again, it's always an ounce of prevention is always better than trying to get hundreds of cases that could have been resolved at the very beginning.
All right, I appreciate that. I just thought I would see what kind of intervention you would be proposing as a member of the board. And thank you very much for that. And you have also, by responding, you shared with us your background to some degree about how you see being involved in this important board. So tell us also, what is your familiarity with the work of the Office of Employee Appeals as it relates to perhaps something that you have done in your career, your 35 years career?
I have overseen the Employee and Labor Relations offices in 3 different agencies. And at one point at the Department of Labor, I had to testify in front of the Merit Systems Protection Board for the federal government on a case where the employee was terminated. And and I've also reached out to the Deputy General Counsel to speak with her just to find out about the process and to learn about the district government appeals process, because I'm fully aware of the federal government's appeals process. And I've had those conversations, and I've looked through the flow chart online to see, hey, where it starts and then how it actually ends up in the employee appeals process. And so my experience has been, as I was saying before, I like to get things from the beginning, but sometimes you can't prevent them. And once it gets started, once it gets to the end, where it's actually at an appeal process, it is now how can we work together to make sure that we look at all the facts, look at all the data, get all the information, look at it to ensure that it's legally sufficient, and to ensure that it is as fair and we open it, we're looking at it with an impartial mind and doing everything that we can to ensure that we are representing the district government fairly, as well as the employee. And so in the federal sector, in my experience, I have done just that. And so it's a matter of me just it's a matter of me applying the same process to the district government, just ensuring that once it gets to that point, the appeals process, that we work together to do everything cohesively and collaboratively, and ensure that it's fair to all parties, not just to one party.
So then, Ms. Adams, are you prepared to work collaboratively with the other board members, or are you thinking that you would be working more on a case-by-case basis, just exercising your judgment based on the decisions that have been made by staff? In other words, are you working do you see yourself becoming a component of the finale that is done through the board, or are you thinking that you need to get in there and talk more independently as it relates to a decision that's been made by staff?
No, I see myself working collaboratively with the board. What I understand after talking to the deputy general counsel is, we get the cases, we look at them ourselves, and then the board gets together and discuss the cases. So I am all for working with the board. I don't want to work independently. I do want to review it independently and then come back with the board and we discuss as a whole and come up with, our agreement together, listening to what everybody has to say, and then rendering a decision for the board.
All right, thank you so much for that. I will ask you, as I asked Ms. Moorhead, do you have an opinion on how the agency would adjudicate claims that involve vendors? Because currently the jurisdiction of the agency is over employee appeals. But do you think that the agency should be looking at claims that involve the use of vendors in district government?
I think that the agency can do that, but it should be a separate process. I think that employees should have their process, and there should be a process for the vendors as well.
Okay.
And I say that just based on experience in different federal agencies where we do have I have had contractors to come and voice some concerns again I'll give an example about a particular manager, and the manager supervises employees as well as contractors. And I've had to say, well, this is the process for the federal government employee, and then we have to work through the process through your contracting office, through the core, and it should be a separate process. And I do think that the agency should have a process as well.
Great, thank you very much for that. Based on your experience, how have you handled issues involving workplace culture? Or is that an issue that you dealt with in the past?
Yes, workplace culture issue. We've held brown bag sessions We've held lunch and learn sessions. We've had manager and employee roundtables. And the agencies that I've been in, and we've done it several times. I'll say I'm saying we because as an agency, we've done it several times. Because one of the things that we learned, it was early on in my career, I had an Indian, an employee who was of Indian descent. And she went into the office to meet with one of the managers. And the manager had his feet towards her. No one knew that in her culture, that was disrespectful to a woman in her culture. And it really blew up because the manager didn't know about the employee, that culture of hers, and she didn't bother to share it. So from that, every time I went into a federal agency, I've always said, hey, let's make sure we put up some brown bag sessions, some lunch and learn sessions, some roundtables so that we can learn about everyone's culture. And I think that helped set the tone for the agency so that when no one can claim ignorance unless they didn't attend it. We were all aware of the cultures of the different people, and we were able to work together cohesively and ensuring that we did not disrespect any culture or disrespect any employee's culture.
So thank you for that, Ms. Adams. So therefore, are you telling us that you believe workforce culture could have some impact on the claims that might be before your agency?
Yes, I do believe that. In my experience, that has been some of the cases.
Can you describe your management style or how you approach these situations? You've given us a couple of examples, but I just want to make sure you're given an opportunity to put that on the record.
My management style is to be proactive. If I hear anything, and if I hear it enough times, it is for me to say, hey, let me get ahead of this before it gets out of hand. And so I like to work with the managers. I like to work with employees. I like to work with the labor unions. I like to get everybody involved so we can all understand what's going on and work together. And so I always approach things with a positive attitude first. Never start off being negative. It's always with a positive mindset. What can we do to help the agency, to help the employees, and to make the workplace a better place to come to every day? I feel that if you love your job and you like the atmosphere, the employees will be more productive and the agency mission will be met effectively. But if you have to come to a job, your attitude is already negative because you don't want to be there, you don't like to work, you feel like you're being mistreated, and you feel like things are going against you, that works against the agency's mission. So my management style is to, what can we do to make this a better place from the beginning? And I'll start there with a positive attitude by working with the managers and the employees. And like I said, I know this is the Office of Employee Appeals, but what can we do to prevent it before it even gets to the appeal process? What can we put in place to ensure that we're not even having these cases? And if they do come up, can we resolve them at the lowest level first?
So, Ms. Adams, then I have to ask, um, have there been any decisions that you've made that have actually had negatively impacted the organization that you worked with?
No.
All right. Thank you. Um, what are your top priorities for your tenure on this board?
Top priorities are to learn the entire process from beginning to end, to get to know the other board members, as well as the members of the staff of the Office of Employee Appeals, to get to know them, to get their background, to work with them, and to see just to give my input and to do this, I want to say job, but to operate in this position effectively and efficiently as possible. And so I like to learn the process first, like to get to know the managers, the employee appeal staff, as well as the board members, and work to get the work done as efficiently as we can.
So now I must ask you a series of questions that were on the questionnaire that you received, and this is so that we have them recorded on the record. Do you or does any member of your immediate family have any interest financially or otherwise that may directly or indirectly pose a conflict of interest for you in the performance of your duties?
No,
Have you ever been investigated, disciplined, or cited for a breach of ethics for unprofessional conduct by or been the subject of a complaint to any court, administrative agency, professional association, disciplinary committee, or other professional group?
no,
Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for misconduct in the workplace?
no,
Have you ever received a written warning, been officially reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined for violating a security rule or policy?
no.
All right, well, I thank you very much. Hold on one sec, please. All right, Ms. Adams, we thank you very much for your time today. And so you're dismissed. Okay.
Thank, thank
All
you.
right. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
And thanks to all of our witnesses today. In conclusion, members of the public who wish to submit any comments on these confirmations on the council hearing management system, they may email it also to seal@dccouncil.gov, and that's CEAL@dccouncil.gov. The public record on this matter will remain open until Tuesday, July 16th at 5 p.m. The next meeting of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor is scheduled for the 10th of July. It will be a public hearing on two bills, 25-752, the Automatic Voter Registration Technical Amendment Act of 2024, and three bills, and Bill 25790, the Rulemaking Public Comment Modernization Amendment Act of 2024, and Bill 25792, the Notarial Act Clarification Amendment Act of 2024. Okay, and this hearing will begin on July 10th at 11 a.m. This concludes today's roundtable, and I thank all that were involved, including my staff and the support staff here at the council. And thanks to the nominees for appearing and talking with us today. The time is 1:56 p.m. and we are adjourned.